Right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Hudson House, How to Save the World, Part 3. Part 3 is going to be on morality. I have Joe Bucknell with me.
I do.
And, we'll see how it goes. I mean, the last two have been ropey, to say the least. It's hard to save the world, as you can imagine. And we're just trying, and I think we solved some of the larger issues, but there's always the finer points. Now, morality is a big one because it spans not only sort of individual understanding, but then there's more of a community understanding and even a universal understanding of morality. And these are the big things we're going to explore today. So, welcome.
Well, thanks very much. Yeah, that sounds quite an intimidating task to take on.
Indeed, I mean...
But I'll give it a go.
Yes, so... The reason why I suggested morality was because I think the way we understand, what morality is sort of in question at the moment. Because the definition, of morality is principles concerning the distinction between right or wrong or good and bad behaviour. A particular system of values and principles of conduct, and the extent to which an action is right or wrong. That's my son crying in the background, ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering. It sounds like he may have fallen over. Not to worry.
What is the morality of not even going to check? Imagine that, listeners.
Well, my girlfriend, my partner's with him,
That is accurate, that is true. She is in the other room.
So, and is the better of the two parents. so
a smart move.
And he stopped now, he's fine. Sometimes he just
cries himself.
Has a little fall.
Nice.
Nothing major.
He can just get up.
Yeah. So is that immoral of me? What an awful way to start.
I don't really think it's immoral.
Yeah,
I mean, if Yasmin wasn't here, then...
Well, he'd be in here with me and the podcast would be slightly difficult.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be happening.
Plausible. But yeah, he is in the other room. He does sound a little bit upset, but now he seems fine.
Yeah, he seems happy. Yasmin sorted it.
Yeah.
Like you predicted.
Yeah, exactly. So, back to the subject at hand. So what is good and what is bad? What is good and what is evil? And how does it affect the world, Joe? Tell me.
Blimey. Well, I think that's quite a difficult question. I mean, I'm certainly not going to be able to give you a pithy answer. But I think, it's something that seems to be having to be addressed more and more at the moment. Or if it's not being addressed more and more, it's simply the fact that we're able to see the effects of what we think are good and bad more and more with, say, the news and coverage and social media, things like that. Maybe we just know more about it. But we do seem to be sort of shifting more from just sort of one side of the fence to the other to actual sort of good and bad. You seem to have like Trump is almost like a cartoon villain now, as like epitomising it, what it is to be bad. Obviously it's not quite as cut and dry as that, but we seem to be making more of a distinction between good and bad as opposed to like the finer details in between.
And also it seems that within the society, like for example Trump, you wouldn't call him a moral person. He hasn't got the how you describe a moral person. He doesn't hold many of those characteristics, and yet he's successful, which sends a message that within society there isn't a need necessarily to be a moral human being. And when you see, I was discussing this the other day, that although with Trump making that gif of him attacking the CNN from when he was in the WWE, so a violent act against the media, right?
Yeah.
And they were saying it's not presidential. Him attacking people on Twitter is not presidential.
Yeah.
Him doing these things isn't presidential. And he came back and his people came back and said he's the new sort of presidential. Like he's a strong man. He doesn't let people walk over him.
Okay.
He doesn't. And if someone attacks him, he's going to attack them back. Now, my point is that he should be leagues above the petty things that people say on Twitter. He should be wise enough to understand what those people are trying to do by riling you up. They're trying to get you to be riled up because then it supports their cause and helps and makes you look like an idiot.
He shouldn't even have enough active time to be on Twitter.
Yeah, and also you'd be above it all.
Yeah, be above it.
You're above the pettiness that Twitter has with the arguments, and so you wouldn't even enter onto your radar. But the fact that he spends a decent amount of time on it a day, that shows that he is not morally sort of where we should be in a president, but also our culture doesn't require it. I mean, who does the morality apply to? And I'm talking about me when I was thinking about this. It's a funny one because I said morality, and then when I actually had to sort of look at it and think about it, I was like, wow, like it's actually quite intriguing, because I'd say I am all for kindness and being nice to people, and looking after human beings, and everyone's got a right to equality, and even all beings, animals, the earth, all have a right to sort of live a decent life. But it doesn't extend too far in terms of action. I'd sit here and talk about it, but and also to a certain extent I'd act upon it, but it's not going to make me put the smartphone down that's built by people that live in compounds that don't have to leave, and there's suicide nets. There's you've got children mining the minerals to make them for the ingredients for the batteries. I've still got a smartphone, and I think, am I a bad human being because of that? And that's a moral question. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, who are we to impose this idea of what morality is? Like, you'd kind of hope that there'd be some sort of democratic, a pretty objective view of certain things which are good and bad, and say, for example, things like using what are essentially slaves in tower blocks full of workers with suicide nets so that they can't even kill themselves.
They can't even kill themselves. Isn't that just awful?
That is pretty shocking. But the fact that it is allowed to happen must mean that we can't have that moral a big deal with it. So, for example, Trump, like, who are we to say what is presidential and what is sort of you should be morally upholding? We know that he has these views and we know what sort of person he is, but the reason he's there is because he was voted there. So you can't really say, we sort of, humanity should have this moral view of stopping him, we shouldn't let people like that, but he's not. Well, you could maybe argue that he did get there by unfair means, but it's not like no one voted for him. It's not like this guy's just sort of turned up and we're sort of all turning against him. What he considers to be morally right, I think, is sort of as far right wing as you can be, which is all out for yourself. What can I get for me? What can I do for me? And to me, what he sees as presidential is just sort of, I think, another stepping stone in his wealth or his power or his sort of empire. And if we, the public, well, not we the public, but the American public had voted him to do that, probably not it being that difficult to interpret that that's what his moral compass is, then who are we to say that it's wrong?
Yeah, that's a very good point. But I think this comes to the argument of, is there a universal morality? Because I think what it comes down to is that although I know the clothes that I wear, the technology that I use has all come from mostly poorer countries and from industry where the workers are underpaid, massively undervalued and not looked after whatsoever. A lot of them live in awful poverty. I know that, but there's this feeling that there's not really much I can do about it anyway. I could blog, I could YouTube video, I could go and join organisations to get involved, but I'm well aware that there's no corporation in the land, no company in the land that's going to go, oh Jesus, Apple aren't going to go, fuck Sonny, like, I didn't even look at it like that. I didn't even think that what I was doing was immoral. I just thought I can get it done there cheaply. They obviously want to work because they're here. Like
they would do it if they didn't like it.
The 6-year-olds must enjoy it. I imagine. I didn't realise that they weren't enjoying it. I didn't realise they were poor, and they're not going to turn around and suddenly sort of fix everything. They're not. Because that's not the way that this world works.
But the reason that those companies can operate in those kind of ways is because, in a sense, they are legally obliged to. If you're not making as much, if you're not making as much profit as you possibly could do, you're letting down the shareholders, and you have a moral obligation to provide as much as you can with people who've bought shares in your company, whether that be by avoiding tax through certain loopholes, or using the cheapest labour, or not necessarily making the product as well as you could, because they're actually obliged just to be out for the capital. It's kind of like the old, Edison versus Tesla type thing, or VHS versus Betamax videos. The sort of second place thing, the thing that's maybe less morally good, can be more profitable therefore more aggressive, and then be the dominant force. I bet there are mobile phones that are made really ethically, but I bet they're not a big thing in the marketplace because
they reckon you'd have to add $1,000 onto it
to make an ethical smartphone.
Give or take, yeah.
And no one's going to buy that.
Do it. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that I often sort of feel almost guilty that I play a part. I'm playing a part of this game. That but the alternative is, do I just move to a desert and live in a yurt and drink my own waz? You know, like I don't.
It's difficult to live in this world, or certainly in this way, without at least hurting someone along the way.
Yes, it's like I will happily help thy neighbour. I'll happily, if someone's in trouble, I will look after them as much as I can. But I can see that every day on the TV that I watch. You know, so where does that extend to? What is my community? You know, and that's what I find fascinating about it, is because, like, I always find that I want to be a good human being, but just being alive, you're contributing to waste. Like, you ever seen a series called Utopia? It was just one thing this guy said where she was like, I'm really eco-friendly. And he said, well, the most eco-friendly thing you could do is kill your son.
Kill your child, yeah. I have seen that.
And
well, it's interesting. I mean, there is such like a philosophical thought as antinatalism.
Yeah.
Which,
right, well, that's interesting.
Just by bringing someone into the world, you're sort of doing a bad thing, because you know that there's a sort of state of, within a state of non-existence, your lack of pleasure and lack of enjoyment can't be a bad thing, because you're not existing to not enjoy it.
Right.
But with something that does exist, there is a state where they can either be in pleasure or be in displeasure. And just the thought of bringing someone into a world where they could experience any form of displeasure is kind of immoral, because the non-existence would be better than an existence with any suffering whatsoever.
Right, yeah, because there's the train of thought that anything that can feel happiness or misery should then receive morality.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, that should have a say, at least, or some sort of should have a moral compass of its own.
Yeah, and I think then it breaks down into ethics and morality, because I think the morality is something that's very individual and something very personal. Like I always find that, and I notice it every day, like in my work life, in my normal life, there are moments when I override my principles for ease. Yeah, you know, and we do it all the time.
Everyone does that, yeah.
Slowly but surely, you know, and I think of myself as principled, but I'm very aware of the fact that a lot of the time that they fall by the wayside because it's easy. You know, like I wouldn't have a job, but I used to always, amount of times I've walked out of a job because I talk myself out of it. I realise what the industry's about and why I don't want to do it anymore, why I hate the product, and then it goes downhill from there. I start openly sort of going, this product's bullshit, and then they're like, well, what are you doing here then? And I'm like, oh yeah, I agree, fuck you, I'll see you later.
Yeah,
you know, and so.
Yeah,
ethical forestry, yeah. So, that was a good one actually, because I got
a good storm.
I got severance pay as well, didn't I? I'm just like, please, just go. We'll pay you. Just leave. Yeah, it's sound.
There's only so much of a pain you can be in someone's arse before they just pay you off to make you leave.
Yeah, but. Now I've got a son. Now I've got. I'm an older man. I'm not older man, but I want to have things. I want to eventually get a mortgage, for example. You know, and just to get on the ladder, or have the opportunity to do something with it. Yeah. And so you've got to play the game. You know, and that may go against your principles, but it is what it is.
But also, that's why I think there can't be some kind of like universal morality, because not only is all morality subjective, there would be things, I'm sure we probably fall pretty similar on some things, but there'd be some things that I would consider morally good that you might be really against, or vice versa. So the fact that everyone has their own subjective like concept of what their morality is and what morality is means sort of by definition that there can't be a universal concept of it, because everyone's going to differ in some way.
Yeah.
And if you just sort of had a race of people that were all on exactly the same wavelength, is that even still humanity? Well, if there's no like disagreement or anything like that.
I think what it is you have, this is my opinion anyway, you've got morality, which is a thing that you experience. It's part of your experience, like who you choose to be in the world. You've then got the ethics of your community, society, or atmosphere, or environment. Sorry. So and those two can contradict each other. Like you may live in a place where abortion's illegal, yet you believe that abortion shouldn't be illegal. But that's the ethics of your society that you abide by. You know, so you won't have an abortion, like, even though you think you have the right to.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
Sure.
you've that's split up, and then but there's also this universal thing where everyone can tell you what they think is right or wrong, and it's normally got the same sort of idea until friction arises, until a little bit of chaos gets added to the mix, and then everyone's idea squiffs. Because it's like, for example, someone who blows himself up because his family was killed by a drone, and he now hates that nation, and then he then goes and blows himself up. Right? He must think morally he has some standing in that. You know, like, I'm not saying he goes and blows up innocence. Let's say he goes and blows up a soldier's camp or whatever. You know, like pick that.
He sees them as a face of what is responsible for what's happened to him.
Yes, like he will feel morally that he is doing something justified. And of course, on the other side of things, they're going, well, why are they doing this? Like, I don't understand how you could blow someone. But I imagine if everything was taken from me, there'd be a pretty big consequence for that. You know, like I wouldn't want to be around anymore. So that I understand that.
You
But
don't want
it's
to try and
not,
exact some revenge.
But you look at it, and it's not morally correct. No. Like, that man should try and find some peace. You know, try and fight the cause, but not blow people up. That's not the answer. But you can get why you would. You know, it's no different to Denzel Washington in Man on Fire when the kid he thinks the kid's dead, so he's like, right, everyone's getting it. You know, he just starts mowing people down. Is that moral? Sort of. You know, like you go, well, these guys are bad guys. They deserve to be slain. But
I think that's because we're watching it through the sort of the world that is a Hollywood film, and you can have people that are morally one side or the other. Whereas the reason it's not that easy in real life is because people aren't just bad guys. It isn't quite as black and white as that. But what film is very good at is making you sort of distance yourself so much from the antagonist that you think that is like almost a depiction of evil. So I don't mind. Say I, for example, wouldn't agree with the death penalty, but I love it when the bad guys get killed in films because I think they flipping deserved it, and I think it on a real level.
And also you'd have to ask that question again if something happened where that person who deserved the death penalty is connected to yourself. You know, like I always have these ideals, but when crunch time hits, I wonder what people's ideals really are. You know, I'm smart enough to think about something and go, to an extent, like, this is what is expected of us morally, you know, and I can hedge my bet. But when shit hit the fan, I don't know, you know, it's that's what's fascinating about the whole idea as well, is that it's putting our thoughts and feelings and theories into action that is rare, you know, because if I did truly believe that, I wouldn't have a smartphone. I wouldn't have that smartphone, you know, because that's not fair on other human beings.
But is you not having a smartphone going to stop that from happening?
Not at all, but surely that's a protest of the fact. I mean, the fact that I'm aware of it and I'll tell people, maybe, hopefully, in decades to come, technology will move forward and we'll have machines make it for us. But that's not going to change the fact that nothing's done.
But that's, again, to go back to that thing, I think it's like that would be a pretty meaningless protest just by not having one and putting yourself at sort of the disadvantage that means in this day and age. You haven't done enough there just by not having one to stop the industry. So it almost doesn't make a difference whether you have one or not. Now, I know you can say that if everyone thought like that, then we wouldn't have the issue in the first place. But the fact is, we're not a hive mind. We can't all think collectively. We have to think as individuals and try and build a society where reacting as individuals can hopefully come together, as opposed to just you sort of having a moral view on something and then wanting the entirety of it to stop. So I think do you agree that there's like an individual morality and a sense of the world? Yeah, what sort of personally speaking?
So your own version of your principles and your moral code, and then you have this ethics, which is it's like a community thing.
Maybe I think it's. I mean, I'm a big believer in, say, like nurture over nature.
Right.
So a lot of people would say that there's something inbuilt that's sort of good and bad, and sort of whatever happens. Even that's something that's explored quite a lot in films, where you see some sort of kid who was raised in really depraved positions, but somehow still manages to like make decisions with this sort of like moral upstanding that we have that actually that child would have no idea about. So that's kind of, I guess, suggesting that there's like an innate morality that you have to live by. But to be honest, I don't think it's quite as cut and dry in that. I think if you're brought up, say for example, in a tribe where the norm is murder and cannibalism as part of ceremonies, which is still an existing thing, it's becoming less and less as we chop more of the Amazon down, but that is a thing that exists. Now, is the person that goes out and kills someone in order to eat them, are they morally bad? I wouldn't necessarily say that they are. I would certainly say that killing someone to eat them is a morally bad thing to do. But I can't infringe my morality on that person, because my morality I have because of my nurture, because of the world that I've been brought up in. So I think, yeah, we all have to sort of be expected to have like an inner morality and something that we'd hold ourselves accountable to. But at no point do I really think we should expect them to cross over all that much. I think it's good when they do, and hopefully it's a cause for good in what I would view as good. Like, say, just an example, say for example, shifting to the left politically a little bit, as opposed to just immediately going to the right and blaming the people that are easiest to blame. Say for example, like you said, when friction hits, you really see the shit hits the fan, and you think some people see, say for example, the fact that there's more foreigners here now, and I don't have a job like I used to have a job. You could, in your head, make a link. Before the foreigners were here, I had a job. There, it's like a cause and effect thing, whereas cause doesn't always equal effect. So you could go into it with that and not necessarily be morally bad. I think you've just made a poor judgment. So I could think the complete opposite to that, but I wouldn't necessarily think that I'd be maybe like morally at odds with that person.
Well, yeah, I often do things where I look back and go, I shouldn't have done that. I wouldn't, and so my version of who I am and then what I actually am are sometimes two very different things.
Yeah.
Nothing massive or necessarily evil or awful, but just different to what I'd imagine me being. And I've always found that quite fascinating, and that sort of begs the question of who are you? Like, because you end up, like, a lot of it is reactive. A lot of what you do is reactive. Conversations you have are reactive, and then you're actually conscious of a very little amount of time. I'd imagine a lot of what you're doing is like autopilot, basically. And so, depending on what sort of dude your autopilot is, also is sort of depending on what sort of person you are. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess maybe that's, say for example, as you, as someone who's just become a father, is maybe part of your obligation of like morality to instill like a good set of morals upon someone. If I don't know if you do think it's more sort of nurture or nature.
Well, I think I was always a big nurture guy, and I do believe that a massive part of the human being that you are is built by it. But I've been listening to some people recently that people that know what they're talking about. That talk about your genetic imprint and how when we unlock it more and learn to understand it more, we will see that so much of us is shaped by how much stress the mother was in the second trimester.
Right.
What sort of nutrients she was was there any episodes of like a fall or
yeah.
So, and not just her, but also what was the father like? You know, there's and I think that we're going to come to this understanding that genes have more of a memory than we understand. They did a study where I might just be talking bullshit, but I'm pretty sure this is the truth.
Okay.
They had mice in a lab, and these were certain sort of mouse that was hunted by birds of prey, and so whenever you heard a bird of prey, they'd scatter, you know, and so they used to do it. They used to put a bird of prey up there like a shadow sort of thing, and they'd all scatter.
Yeah.
They then bred that out of them. So they waited a month without any bird ever coming around, or however long it took for the rats to die, or the mice to die, new ones to come along, and then new ones to come along. So generations down, they've never experienced that. Yeah. And then they put the shadow back into the air, and the mice behave exactly the same way.
Wow, well, they would still scatter.
Yeah.
So it's something that is inbuilt.
Yes.
It's something they haven't had to do.
And they reckon that could be because that's what's happened generation after generation after generation. It's like a warning, like a mark left on a gene. And imagine if you are have a history of all of your ancestors, all your fathers were all soldiers, for example, and all lived violent lives, came to violent ends. You know, like maybe only because they were called up or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that then make you just ready to go all the time? You know, like does that make you like? I
Probably
think
is a level of like chemical memory in it.
yeah,
But I mean,
it's fascinating, isn't it?
something to go like even one step further than that. There's an insect that basically, in order to get through its larval stage and then basically sort of burst out as it's like to complete its life cycle, basically, it has to get into the blood of a mammal in order for it to be hunted, so that it can then be in the belly of a bird or something that it can live on and lay its own eggs. Now, you can't. I think that is so instinctive. So literally, it will make this say it was like a rat or something. It would make it, instead of heading for the shade, it would hang out in more open areas, so that it's more likely to get caught. It's almost sort of controlling its behaviour.
Yeah.
Now, something on a larval stage that small, you can't really think that it's going to have like a conscious thought of, now I need to get up there so I can sort of get into the belly of that bird, therefore I'll be able to reproduce. It has to sort of be so instinctive. Now, we are still of the animal kingdom, even though we've kind of divorced ourselves from it and started to move away, and we actually ignore certain tendencies now because they're not good for us. Say, for example, we still crave fat because we're mammals. We should be hunting. We should crave fat for the hard seasons when it's cold. We don't really have a cold season anymore because we live indoors, so we have to not crave fat. So we have to get to a point where we're completely instinctive, and obviously there probably isn't an exact point over evolution where this happened, but we have to start overpowering our instinct at a certain point. And I guess it comes to a point of how much have we actually overpowered our instinct. Like, we still like the sound of our mother's voice after birth or something like that. We do still have instinctive things, but I think our brains have kind of evolved beyond just instinct now.
So we've got to stop being animals, is what you think, and just take it like, because I imagine a lot of what happens is animalistic. To go back to your bacteria thing, have you ever heard of toxoplasmosis?
I've not.
Toxoplasmosis, and I'm going to butcher this, but it's a parasite that wants to get to a cat, I think.
Right, okay.
So what it does is it manipulates humans and rats and mice in particular ways. Makes humans love cats and crave cats.
Wow.
Right? They reckon there's 600 million people that have toxoplasmosis. Well, they don't know about it. It's a parasite that makes you crave like cats. It changes
That is insane.
your chemical thing. It makes rats sexually attracted to cats, and they get a fucking heart to the cat's piss or something like that, and they seek it out, they find it, cat eats them.
It's easy for the cat to catch.
Yeah, and for a mouse as well, it makes them, like, it lowers their inhibitions and makes them go for cats or go for something like that anyway.
Yeah.
And they reckon like hundreds of millions of people. I'm going to Google it just so I know I'm not
talking out your ass.
Yeah, how many people?
So people that we consider as like crazy cat people, or they've just got 6, 7 in the house, just because they love cats. You think it could be
60 million people? Okay.
Wow.
Well, I doubled it by 10.
Like the population of this country.
Exactly, more than 60 million people in the United States may be infected with toxoplasmosis parasite.
Wow.
There's only 350 million people in there.
Jeez.
So that's an epidemic.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's just one, I guess, that only affects you enough that you want to give your cat a bit of grub.
Yeah.
That is insane. And I guess for the humans that are affected by it, is the parasite getting what it needs, or do we just like the cats enough but not really sort of interpret that to a point that we get it across to it, or we're just sort of feeding it, we don't really know why?
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I don't even know how then the toxoplasmosis would get to the cat. I'm not gonna have sex with the cat, you know.
Yeah, well, for some people,
well,
they could have a really bad case of it.
How would that then happen? Maybe sneeze on it.
Sneeze on the cat. Parasite knows exactly. I'm in cat distance now.
Yeah.
Get into the sneeze zone.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know.
I mean, I'll do some reading up on it.
It's fascinating.
It does sound interesting.
Yeah, maybe I have butchered it, but 60 million people in the US alone.
Wow,
That's an epidemic.
yeah, it is.
Someone needs to stop that.
But I mean, I guess that's just something that's evolved. It's just like piggybacked on us.
Yeah, well, you've seen like the fungi that gets inside insects and
You can get
makes them climb really high.
Ants' brains. And
Yeah,
things.
and then
that is
spores.
insane.
You know,
Yes.
that's sci-fi. You know,
Yeah.
like, you haven't got to watch Alien: The Covenant, which is actually very good.
Is it?
Yeah, it's good. You haven't got to watch that. It exists. It's just we're too big for it to fuck with us. You know, that's all it is. It's like we've got monsters everywhere, but we're just big enough.
Yeah.
Like if the average height of a person was 4 foot, then we'd have monsters everywhere. You know, like a lion, like fucking bears.
Yeah.
Then we wouldn't need TV to make shit up.
Yeah.
You know,
we'd be terrified enough
like,
of that alone.
our houses would be smaller. You know, like imagine if we were like 3 foot. The average human was 3 foot tall, and that was normal. Like a basketball player was 4 foot. You're like, fucking hell, with these tiny little courts, it'd be so cute. But anyway, so the average height is that, and then we'd have little houses, little towns,
Yeah.
and then if an elephant actually ran through, it'd be a Godzilla scenario.
Yeah, it would be our monster.
Yeah.
It would be a monster.
Yeah, and we'd all run from and we'd have tiny guns, you know.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it'd be amazing.
I like the thought that the guns would be the same size.
Yeah.
And we just have to take them on with these giant rifles
Yeah.
and we can't really use them properly.
Yeah, and you'd be firing your bows and arrows at them, but you can't. You haven't got the strength to get the. So these
The arrow's too heavy
just
to load
bouncing
in.
off. Oh man.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, it's a scary
gorillas.
concept.
Yeah. Imagine a gorilla coming at you when you're 3 foot 4
I mean,
foot tall.
a gorilla coming at you is still pretty intimidating.
Yeah,
I just live in a house where there's not many gorillas around, but I mean, they could still tear the shit out of a regular human.
Yeah, there was a humanoid called the Homo florensis,
Right.
which was really tiny, living in Indonesia. Some people still think they went around like it's like the Indonesian Yeti.
Okay.
That's,
Is that like what people think? Isn't there like a race that's meant to be really small?
Pygmies, yeah.
Pygmy, is
Yeah.
that what people think is
It's-
like linked to a pygmy?
I think it's Homo florensis. I think that's what it's called, and
Okay.
they were tiny, and,
Right.
and that's now agreed upon. So at one point, right, when you had like Homo sapiens sapiens,
Yeah.
you had these big, gross like Neanderthals, big and strong and intelligent. You had the Homo florensis. You had lots of other different ones. Like it was Lord of the Rings, wasn't it? Basically,
that would be a pretty cool time to live. You had sort of people of maybe similar intelligence
yeah.
that were all sort of completely different body types.
Yeah, and
that's
then they're
pretty
warring
fascinating.
tribes and that. Like it just was Lord of the Rings. You know, I'm pretty sure
That sounds pretty fascinating. I'd quite like to be around in those times.
Yeah.
I guess it would be pretty brutal.
But yeah, like I was saying earlier, like the Homo sapiens just mobbed the Neanderthals. So we were able to have a much bigger community than they were. Like
Apparently we
150
mated
people.
with them. Apparently I don't know how much evidence there is, but it's like a new theory that
Yeah.
there's a bit of Neanderthal in us.
Well, I think that certainly would have happened. You know, so along the lines that. But
We
I
probably
don't
would
know how.
have, if there's a humanoidy type creature around, we probably would have tried to have sex with it.
and there was just like these almost dogging sites where both breeds meet up and then jerk off on each other's windscreens and that. And
I don't know if they've had windscreens, but certainly on their like rock windscreens.
yeah,
They had.
yeah, the cars with the drive with their legs.
Yeah, nice. I think you're mixing Flintstones with natural history there.
Well,
But
I think
if
most
you were
things...
to go do a cement mixer, I probably would just open a pelican's mouth and do it in there.
Yeah, good point. So back onto the topic of morality.
Oh yeah, morality.
What are we going to do? What can we do to fix this crazy world? I think the idea that we need to understand that we've got this animal nature, take that on board, and then diffuse it. I think would beat a lot of things. But I also think we live in a society that wants you to be more like that animal. Do you see what I mean?
What give into your lustful urges?
Yeah,
is a
because it
distraction.
spends money, it consumes.
Yeah.
You know, like your lustful urge. My lustful urge to eat a whole bag of fanny pack Doritos. You know,
Yeah.
like my lustful urge to consume and to be lazy and to I think a lot of that's animal. You know, a lot I like. Whereas if I'm conscious of myself, I'm like, right, I'm not going to consume because it's actually quite bad for you. And also there's an industry built upon it that I don't agree with. I'm not going to be this person because I don't believe in that. You know, like, but I don't do that. I just go rah.
Yeah, well, we do go rah-rah, everyone does, but to an extent. Like, I mean, they play on the thing, like the fact that we say crave fat. There is a whole industry based on the fact that we crave fat, and they try and, like, provide us with that and make money off it at the same time. The same way we have, like, lustful urges. Like, it's not a surprise that there's, like, scantily clad ladies on the front of magazines or in order to, like, sell products.
Yeah.
Because that's playing on, you know, our, like, instincts as a used to, you know, like sell products or make an industry out of itself. So I don't know if that's the kind of thing that needs to be like morally addressed, or if we should just accept that that's our instinct, and that's because we can't divorce ourselves from the humans that are doing that. If you take it far back enough, we are just all sort of part of the human race that's all sort of playing off each other. So is there an obligation to sort of, you know, bring this morality in it when it's us that are doing it to ourselves?
I think we need to make it more appealing to be moral. I think we need to reignite the idea of a role model, because not many exist anymore. And I think partly because of the information age. Like, the reason why people like Bob Marley and people, your John Lennons and your Che Guevara's, granted people have sort of miscued on what he actually was.
Sure.
The reason why they hold such high esteem is because we'd never seen their dick pic. You know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Their whole
they
lives,
died young enough.
Yeah, their whole lives aren't scattered all over the internet, and
Definitely.
every moment of their time is doctored, and also the fact that the contact with your audience was so little that you could be so mysterious, and people would make stories about how great you were. Whereas now you're expected to tweet every couple of days and make your appearances and go to your YouTube channel and do you know what I mean? There's this obligation.
Yeah, but maybe that's all it is that actually morality of humans hasn't really changed that much. It's just now there's a magnifying glass on all of it.
But the veil's been lifted, I think.
The veil's been lifted. Yeah, part of that is just that we now know more. Yeah, all of these people were probably doing very immoral things, just like every human does. Yeah. It's just they weren't exposed at quite the same sort of vicious rate that they are now.
No, definitely. And I think that has... and then also our wisdom isn't growing with our technological abilities. Right. It seems to have petered, you know, and I think that's something that needs to be thought about as well. It's like, as we move into the age of AI, it's great to have, or things like cloning, or no one's asking the moral question of, is it okay? Like, should we be doing this? Not can we do this? It's the same thing with the nuclear bomb. Like, they had committees. There was a moral committee, and everyone always thinks of this as some awful clandestine operation, but from what I gather, they had the great thinkers of America and scientists and philosophers have a think tank and go, should we do this? And then it was put in the hands of a man who was massively unprepared for it, and that's the problem. But we're entering an age where artificial intelligence, for example, should we do it? Yeah. Not can we?
That's
CRISPR.
almost
You know CRISPR?
It's only a matter of time now, isn't it?
Do you know what CRISPR is?
No.
When you can, and it's a technology where we're almost there to choose what child you want, like choose it.
Oh, I see.
And
yeah,
so many, but not just hair color, eye color, specifications, average height, average weight, like these sorts of things. And it's like, can we do it? Yeah. Should we do it? Yeah. You know, I agree with eradicate the disease, eradicate the gene that causes cancer, eradicate all these things. But then when you start creating a being, then what's the point in doing it the normal way anymore? You know, like why run the risk? And also, who is privy to that technology?
Wow. Yeah, I mean that is the kind of thing that I think. If we have there's a part of me that thinks, like, if we're smart enough to make the technology to do it, we might as well do it. Like, I think we
could probably clone humans now.
Well, maybe that's just evolution coming full circle. Maybe we should just go as fast as we can, for as long as we can, until it sort of completely corrupts itself.
But we could fuck it all up, and then we're all dead.
Well, maybe that's the cyclical thing, like we sort of touched on before. When a species gets too big for its own boots, it gets so successful that it then eats too much of its food supply. It gradually then the population will dwindle again, back to the time where it's sort of more a reasonable number that can feast on that food supply. Maybe that's all we are. Maybe it's just we've got big enough. We've got so intelligent now that we're literally sort of destroying our own environment, like lots of animals do, just on a smaller scale. So say, for example, when a beaver goes and builds a dam and floods out an entire area, no one goes, oh, that beaver is a despicable environmental disaster. It's just
someone might.
It's doing what it does. No one's going to criticise it being like conservative or something like that. That beaver is a Republican. Yeah, they're just gonna. It's just doing what it does, and maybe we're just doing what we do, and it's having as destructive an impact as it is but eventually we'll invent something like that, like an AI that's going to work out either how to make it better, whether that be give us better technology or get rid of us.
Just kill us all. Oh, we've got there again.
It always comes back to this.
Just something needs to depopulate us. That's awful.
But I think it will be us. That's the thing. I don't think it's such a bad thing.
Yeah.
If we wipe ourselves out
and then start again. I mean, there's this idea which I find really fascinating of how they reckon you can plot in civilizations where a civilization is meek and poor, and so it's humble, and it becomes humble. The community's really strong. The morality and the ethics are really strong.
Yeah.
So because of that, it starts to prosper, and it begins to prosper. It starts to get better and better. Things get easier. You don't need to farm so much for your crops, and don't need to work so hard for your shit.
Yeah.
So you start to become a bit more lax. You start to forget about the moral compass a little bit because you don't need to be humbled, and because you've got no reason to be. And then it starts to get worse and worse and worse. And then before you know it, you're really successful, giant, and very immoral. The morals start to drop and drop and drop, and then it destroys itself, ends up in ashes, and then the people from the ashes are very humbled by that, you know, and they're all very humble, very moral, and they're very meek, and then they start to prosper again.
I think we're just at the higher point of us right now.
Yeah,
we're just at one stage in that sort of cyclical thing.
But then there's an idea that has an end game of like we get closer every time,
right?
Which is a nice idea, but our ability to completely destroy ourselves is now a thing.
Yeah,
you know, and that's never happened before.
We could wipe ourselves out with a few presses of a button.
Yes, yes. So that's one of the end games. But not only that, disease, not only that, famine. But also just all-out war as well. You know that we're close to really being at an age where the risk has never been larger. You know, like the opportunity for real failure has never been bigger. You know, we've never really had for 50, 60, 80 years war on our doorstep. You know, and that's sort of could happen again in our lifetime, you know, and it's not rare that it's the amount of
it's happened in relatively recent history that it could happen again.
You look at the Ottoman Empire, for example, which you say that and everyone goes, yeah,
around sort of the Turkish
yes, huge empire, which lasted a long time, but it's forgotten about now. No one knows who it is. It's arguably one of the richest and one of the biggest empires that ever lived. Yeah. But no one knows what it is now. You know, the Persians, the Persian armies were vast. The Persian grip on the world was vast. So were the Chinese. So was Genghis Khan's grip. So and then the British Empire's grip, and it's waning. It was waned. It's gone. You know, basically. But you still see this colonial ideas.
Yeah.
But it's going. You know, and are we on a downturn? Is it time for another civilization to be top of the pops, so to speak?
Well, maybe. I mean, that kind of, I think we just sort of, again, like we've talked about it a little bit, but I think we kind of, the reason we sort of shift left and right is because we have to have this sort of cyclical view of, say for example, I would sort of position myself pretty firmly on the left. Like I said before, I don't know where the flip you are, because you have very staunch views that you could think are the most liberal thing in the world, and then you could think something that you would normally put as right. You're just a Unitarian unto yourself. I don't understand that.
I think it's individual moments is what is important, because I honestly think some people don't deserve to live, but I couldn't categorise that.
Yeah.
Some people forfeit their right to be alive.
Okay.
And they need to be vanquished.
Okay.
I honestly believe that to be the case, but I couldn't tell you what sort of person, because it's an intent thing. It's something where you look at and you go, you're never going to be able to do good on earth. Like you're like nothing and it might be that you've had a really awful existence, you know, and I can understand that. But some people forfeit their right.
Okay.
But I also believe that everyone's got a right to live and everyone's got a right to exist. But I think what it comes down to is that's the universal thing. You know, there's it's really hard to take into account, because if nothing you're ever going to do is be evil, sorry, nothing you're capable of doing is it, like everything you just destroy everything, like consciously, you're just not a very nice human being.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, like, is there any point you being existing, prosperity wise, logically?
Yeah.
No, probably not. But how do you quantify that? like someone who has committed a heinous crime. There's no point in lowering the tone by talking about what crime it is, but you can imagine one.
Yeah.
Do they deserve to be alive? Now, I've always argued, well, are you going to kill them? You know, like this idea of the death penalty, like, are you going to do it? Are you going to be the person that becomes the killer? Yeah, like, because you then got to make someone a murderer in order to be the person that presses the button or does the injection or whatever. So the argument is if you'd kill them, if you're willing to take that burden upon your chest because that person didn't deserve to be here, then I think that's a justified thing.
Yeah.
If you want to be a part of a system that wants to murder that murderer but isn't willing to pick up the fucking axe yourself, then that's when it becomes a bit squiffy.
But I mean, this isn't... Well, I don't know about that because this isn't Batman. I mean, you could... Like we've said before, different people have different moral views. So something that you would see as a really heinous crime and you would be willing to like take someone out for that.
I don't know if I'd be a murderer. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay, well,
that's why.
Just an example, someone that could have something that I describe as like a pretty way off moral compass could think that person has done such a crime that they deserve to die for it. Therefore, I'm going to kill them.
Yeah.
If you start like sort of letting people take that onto themselves, you let people of all sorts of moral standings just sort of start arbitrarily killing people.
Yeah.
I think it's going to lead to a bad place, which is why I think there should be some form of system of government which decides what sanctions are given to what people. So I'm not sort of because I'm on the left, I would consider myself a fan of a big government, a big state, because I think that's the way that we can make the best moral decisions. If we come together and think, is it right that I, say, put this person down or take away their privileges to freedom and lock them away because of what they've done?
Yeah, no,
I don't think each of us should individually be able to make that decision, but that's why I think a government of sorts is a good thing.
Yes, but there is also an element of some people aren't hardwired correctly.
Yeah.
You know,
okay.
And I can't be the judge of that. I'm not that person. But I'll approach the question of: should everyone be allowed to live no matter what they do?
Well, there's also. I mean, I would probably say yes, because I don't really agree with the death penalty. But there's a point that you've got to take someone out. I'm not saying I never agree with killing anyone, because there's a point where if someone's, say, running into a crowded area with a sword and I had a gun in my hands, I think it would be the logical moral decision, if I had the ability to take him out, because, say, for example, the life that I've saved there has... I don't know what he was going to do in that crowd of people with a sword, but I can bet it wasn't great.
Yeah.
So I think you can... Yeah, I do agree with sort of infringing death upon people, but just as a sort of like a revenge or as an execution.
What about, do you think that ISIS should be allowed to survive? Or for example?
When you say survive, do you mean like dismantle the operation or just bomb them out?
Exactly, yeah, but because the current objective is to just bomb until they're all dead, basically. Is that okay from your point of view?
I do not think it's okay to just sort of bomb, although there are points where I'll like sort of question my own morality on the death penalty and say like there are probably points where violence is maybe the only solution,
because that is a version of a death penalty.
Is going to end in death.
Yeah,
it's not just beating someone up; it's sending like a missile into
airstriking
their camp or something like that. So yeah, to be honest, sometimes I think those things are justified, but it has to be for what I would argue is the greater good, and I think that's what's most dangerous. Is what is the greater good? Like you could say, you could take a hardcore environmentalist and say what's for the greater good is that humanity decreases a lot. Like it's not. I mean, I'm sure there's been more than a few movies that have played with the idea, like even Kingsman that I saw recently. The sort of villain in it, the antagonist is someone who's looking to pretty much take out the human race for an environmental viewpoint. Now, I would say I think that's pretty bad to try and kill a load of people, especially in the way that he was doing it. He just sort of gave us like a rage that we would all start killing each other.
Yeah.
But, you know, he had his sort of moral standpoint, and you'd have to say that according to his own moral compass, he was doing what he thought was sort of absolutely right, which is why I quite like these ideas of everyone sort of having to not come to one decision, because that's impossible.
And also, I suppose the idea that...
But at least a form of consensus.
Yeah, thing is that what I find very difficult is that for a lot of people, the path of change is very, very available, you know, and people do, like we said earlier, like you can look back on your life and some of your actions make you cringe.
Yeah.
And you feel, I'm a good person now. Now, if you look back on your life and go, oh, when I murdered all those people, that was silly of me, you know. Oh, when I was that war criminal and I used to mow people down like for fun. You know, do you remember when I blew up that village?
Yeah.
Oh, that was awful of me. Like, should you be allowed to be able to have that sort of hindsight?
But if you do have that kind of hindsight, would you feel comfortable someone saying, no, I'm willing to put them to death, even though, like, say, for example, I've done some things that I'd say I was 16, that I was like, oh, you look back now and you think, that's pretty despicable, what was I playing at? And in the same way, say, for example, that kid in Manchester who's quite recently been locked up, they were like 16 and they killed a kid. Now, I'm not saying I killed a kid when I was 16,
No.
but I did stuff that the 23-year-old version of me looks back and thinks that was poor form.
Yes,
and
but
to
that's all
to a
relative,
greater
though, isn't it?
extent, I think if you can look back on hindsight and you don't even identify as that person anymore, then you wouldn't really be you wouldn't be executing the person that did those heinous crimes. You're executing a different person.
Yes, agreed. And I think if you're a 16-year-old that kills a kid, it's a very different argument to if you are an adult that's done heinous things.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very different...
Sure.
Let's say you could be a serial killer, you could be a child murderer, you could be a whole host of different things.
Yeah.
There are some absolute things that suggest that you have evil within you that I think means you need to be taken away and eradicated. Like, anyone that has the ability... Okay, for example, someone that awfully murders a child, okay? You don't deserve to be here anymore. Like, you to have that in you, that spectrum of
the ability to do that,
suggests that you're gone. You're past the point of no return. You're evil. Now, I don't know what this point of no return is, but I think no matter how you dress it up, you're always going to be that human being. You know, there are certain things that I've done and I've experienced that live with me, whether I like it or not, good and bad. You know, got some really positive memories, got some really negative ones. One of that memory there is gonna be there and take you back to that place and make you feel those feelings for the rest of your life. Not all the time, but sporadically, and that there I think is something that is universal. Like, some people have evil within them, you know, for whatever reason. You know, everyone's capable of evil. Most people have the fortitude not to go ahead with it. Some people embrace that, you know, and you can't stop that. You can't stop the way that they feel, the mechanism in their brain, whatever it is, but you can stop it from happening again. You can stop it from the situation ever arising. And so, like, the same way that like the samurai code that they felt was completely moral because they were being honourable, like because they have given themselves to their master. Everything they're doing is in service, and so service is moral, and that's how they justified it. You know, and they live very moral lives. But they also slay people. You know, like they would, and that.
That's when I think it's dangerous, when you let other people set what your moral code is for you. And I mean, like your previous argument, I'm not going to like get on my knees and, you know, beg for the life of a child killer to be spared. I'm not going to be that sad. But my point is, just logically thinking about it, if we do have to instill these kind of values or set up a society where we have them, we have to know where we draw the line. And I think because we can't, we shouldn't even try. Say, for example, someone who like kills a kid with their car because they were drink driving. I mean, they've still killed a kid. Is it quite as bad? I mean, it's heinous and they'll be horrified by it.
Yeah, it's very different.
It is, but then what about someone who said, I don't know, had some sort of mental episode and did it or whatever? Just the fact that it would be so difficult to draw the line as to when it's acceptable to kill them, when it's not. We shouldn't do it ever, even though you're right, there probably are examples that are so terrible that it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if that person just died. Yeah,
I think... justice is a whole other podcast, and the way that we view justice is incorrect from my point of view. But it comes down to intent. You know, like for example, someone that buys acid to throw in his ex-girlfriend's face because he's pissed off that she's broken up with him, they don't deserve to be around. Like the mental makeup, like that it requires for you to go and buy the acid, put the acid in a little pot, find out where she is, scope her out, run up on her, throw acid in her face, understand what that's going to do to her for the rest of her life, is evil, you know? And you should have, because of that intent, because of the sort of the brain it requires to do that deed, you shouldn't be allowed to be around other human beings, at the very least. And the argument's there whether you should just go, do you know what, you're finished, game over.
Okay.
Try again next time.
Yeah, better luck next time. Well, yeah, maybe, and that is the whole thing, because if you bring in like sort of like preemptive stuff into it, where there's got to be like an element of preparation and thought behind it, that it can't just be like a spur of the moment, like a crime of passion.
Yeah.
If you actually sort of have that within your makeup to think that, then yeah, sure, I can totally understand why people would think that that's acceptable. But again, it's because that is a hypothetical situation. That person in this hypothetical situation doesn't have the background of, say, they could have had a really comfortable background, or they could have had a really difficult background, or a very violent background where they grew up thinking that, say for example, they acted out of line, their parents smacked the shit out of them. Therefore you think the way you get what you want, or the way you get people to do what you want them to do, is by using violence against them. I mean, I sound like a bit of a like flipping hippie liberal going, just save everyone, man. But I think
I get it.
It's not quite as sort of black and white as he's done this evil act, therefore he is evil. I think everyone is on the...
I'm not saying that.
The capability
I think,
for it.
yeah, everyone has got the capability of doing evil, but not everyone does the evil thing.
True.
You know, and that's the difference, is that there are lots of people that have an awful life and come out of it good.
Yeah.
There are lots of people that have a really good life and come out of it evil. Well, will do evil acts. Now, the person might be a good guy whose life might snap and do an evil act. It doesn't change the fact you've got to go. Like principles, you know,
okay.
like it's the dude that lost his rag because his wife divorced him, so he grabbed his kids and jumped off the balcony and survived while his kids died. You don't deserve to be alive, mate. We'll put you out your misery, you knobhead. You know, life's hard, right? And it will push you to the edge.
Yeah.
And weakness grows, and mistakes are made. But there are moments, and usually lives only have several major moments, and it's how are you going to be the hero, or are you going to be the villain? And if you choose to be the villain, then you've made the wrong decision. Right, and although throughout this whole podcast I've probably contradicted myself several times, because morality is confusing, you know.
It's tough.
It's a tough one. I don't think you'll save the world in this one. But what I'm saying is that there isn't an absolute morality, of course, but there are things that people do that are tests, and there are measurements of who you are as a human being. And I think honestly sometimes you lose the right to be one because it's a gift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that is the case, but I mean, like I say, it isn't an absolute, and for any of your fans that are Star Wars fans, I think they'll agree that only Siths deal in absolutes. So...
Do they actually?
Yeah, Siths only deal in absolutes. Well, that's what Obi-Wan says.
Right.
But in itself, that is kind of an absolute by saying only these people deal in absolutes, which in itself is almost an absolute. Right. But anyway, that's beside the point. But
how are we going to fix things? Let's just...
Well, that's what I mean, is I don't think there is an absolute if you can save the world. But I think you can make it better, and I think the way you'd go about making it better is by, say for example, well, I think we've got someone right now. I mean, I'm not like the Corbyn poster boy, but I really think he is something different, something like we haven't seen for quite a while. And I think that is the best way to try and save things, or at least make things better, is just by, say, actually seeing someone who has shown a history of actual sort of fairness, kindness.
Yeah.
It looks like they're actually just without trying to, you know, just sort of go into power. Someone that wasn't actually necessarily particularly hungry for power, has a very long career in trying to help people, trying to make things better, protesting, going against the system when he saw things like apartheid and poverty and homelessness and things like this. And now he's actually in a position where he's got a big enough voice that he could maybe change things. Maybe that's how we say that. Maybe we put our faith in people that actually do look like they're going to do a pretty good job. It's just there's not an awful lot of them around that you can vote for at the moment.
Yeah. I think I sort of agree. People say that I'm sort of anti-Corbyn and that I don't like him, and it's not that I don't like him. It's that I'm very aware that he's a politician, and forgive me for being cynical of politicians. You know, and I agree that he's got some lovely things to say. I'm also very aware that lots of things that people say during the campaign trail never come to fruition, and when it comes to it.
But
And is that because they're bad people? No. I imagine it's because they have all these great ideas before they step into the fucking maelstrom that is politics.
Yeah.
And they walk into office like imagine Obama. He honestly thought he was going to fix the world. He seems like a nice statesman, lots of weird rumours about him and nonsense, but I don't necessarily think it. I just think he walked in, was mobbed by it, and then you've got the military-industrial complex. You've
Corrupted
then got
by it, maybe?
Well, maybe, yeah. You've then got the economic influence. You've then got all these different industries and lobbyists and unions. They're all swaying, and you owe favours to so-and-so, and he got you here, so you need to do that for him, and blah-de-blah-de-blah-de-blah. And the politics of it all just weighs you all down. They make promises for 10 years when they're only in it for 8, and then those promises get forgotten.
Yeah.
There's nothing's accountable to itself. It's all we change our skin too much. Now, I had this idea for a political system, but I don't think we've got time to go into it.
Give me a brief overview.
Well, you just there's no more parties as such anymore, right?
Okay.
There are positions that people apply for.
Okay.
It's like preliminaries and then actual campaign.
Okay.
So in the preliminaries, anyone can put it's like we're looking for the Minister of Education, right?
Okay.
So in the preliminaries, anyone can put their name forward, and it's vetted by people who obviously know what they're looking for within the education sort of thing, and then you make voting a lot more accessible. Like we bank online, why can't we vote online? It annoys me a little bit.
Okay. I feel like it would be pretty open to hacking, but
then surely banking is as well.
Okay, yeah, fair one.
Do you know what I mean? People put their money online, but they won't put their vote online.
Okay.
I think we've come far enough to figure that out. I'm not the man to do it, but we've come far enough.
Right.
So you vote in the preliminaries. It makes everyone more engaged with who the education minister is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
What are they actually going to do? What are their thoughts and feelings? How are they actually going to help education? And then you get the actual campaign where the top 10 or the top 6 or whatever then go onto the campaign trail, and they do podcasts, do whatever. That you haven't got to spend millions on it, and then each person's got a cap on their funding, and people, rather than just one donor giving Labour 10 million, you go, I'll give 100,000 to him or whatever,
okay.
or if the cap was $1 million,
right.
so they can push their campaign,
get the word out.
and then people are actually judged upon their actual abilities and policies and who they actually are. And then you do exactly the same thing with the Prime Minister, Defence Minister, all of it.
So it might be someone who's been in teaching for 50 years and feels like they've got a good idea and understanding of how it works best. Yeah, I think that's a great idea and it's a great model, but I don't think it's a million miles away from what the system is at the moment if it were working perfectly. I think, say for example, people like Corbyn, I honestly think they do get into politics because they want to change things. They've got an idea that they can make things a little bit better. Now, it's no coincidence that Michael Gove, Boris Johnson, David Cameron, they're all in the Bullingdon Club together at the same time.
Yeah.
All parents were strong sort of conservative donors.
Yeah.
They were kind of bred for power. So, yeah, the things that they say to get into power, I'll take it with a pinch of salt. Like Theresa May, for example, voting against, and Hillary Clinton, in fact, voting against gay marriage and things like that. And then as the sort of the public prevailing winds turn, that it's now predominantly pro things like gay marriage, they also just happen to be pro gay marriage now. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
So you have to look at people that have been consistent throughout, and I honestly don't think there's many politicians out there that do it, but I think Corbyn is one. I think he's someone who did get into it for the right reasons because he thinks he could add something. He never was sort of bred for power. He wasn't sort of pushing himself forward to be the leader of a party or anything like this. He wasn't even always part of the Labour Party. He's had big disagreements with them. He was part of like sort of communist and socialist parties that would see themselves to the left of Labour, and he's sort of drifted in. He's against his own will almost. He was convinced to run for leader. No one thought he would do well. He did incredibly well, and it's just this sort of public opinion, this sort of democratic wave, where people realise actually he could be someone who is maybe out there to save the world, to sort of do something beneficial for the planet. He's not just sort of going to say whatever it takes to get into power. He's putting out consistent opinions that we can see he's been doing from like sort of the 70s.
Yeah.
Maybe that's actually who I want to put my trust in. So I think our system at the moment does allow for what you're talking about. It's just, unfortunately, it can be sort of corrupted and manipulated too easily.
I think where I think our opinions differ, and is I don't necessarily think big government is the way forward. I think we've got to look at the person next to you and start thinking of it in those terms, and we've got to start being good to each other more, be more understanding of each other more. Like, look at the people around you and think about them and their lives and their understanding and their versions of it. And by doing that, you become automatically empathetic. You know, like, people don't think enough about where are we going? Where's it all going? What's actually going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they leave that to the likes of the politicians and hoping that they're going to shape their ethical and moral code because they'll just follow along and nod and that'll be fine. But people need to take more responsibility for themselves and for their own morality and for their own actions. And who are you? Like, I remember not realising that I got to choose who I was until I was about 22. You know, and it was a giant realisation to me. Like, shit, like, I can be whoever I want to be. You know, like, I get to be the person that I want to be.
Yeah.
And people need to understand that more. And I think it is something that's just conditioned out of us. You think, well, I'm not too clever, I'm not too good at this, not too good at that, therefore I'll just do this.
Well, we love a scapegoat, I think, as humans. So I think if everything was a bit more cushy, I really think everyone would be nicer to each other. If we didn't have, say, sort of the turmoils of that we have at the moment, I think people are generally pretty decent to each other. We're not all just getting out of our cars and sort of raping and eating each other.
No, not
when we get into traffic. Occasionally we do that, but it's a minority that do.
Have you got your really cool car?
No, I sold it. I'm afraid I had to go to live in a city, so I just bought a little fixie bike instead.
Nice.
Idiot. But yeah, basically I think if we had it a bit easier, and not even saying like me and you, because we've got it, we've got it okay.
Yeah.
But say, for example, there doesn't have to be, say, like austerity, homelessness. People don't have to be treated that badly. And I think when everyone gets onto a playing field where everyone's got a relatively good quality of life, I think we will be all right with each other. It's just that we tend to sort of blame people for our issues. So whether that be sort of the left and right battling each other on politics, or whether it's different sort of you thinking like you're a superior race to someone else or something like that, we like scapegoats. So we, until it's sort of good and decent and we can actually live decent lives, we're going to keep on sort of being horrible to each other. So I think we've got to address society being okay for people before we start addressing people's morality and why we should be nice to each other. Because I think we probably will be, just if the society that we live in sort of allows us to be nice to each other.
Yeah.
And we can sort of get along day by day without as much strife.
Well, yeah, maybe that's sort of like we sort out the ethics of the society, and then it's easier to be more moral. So we just need to make the society better.
Yeah,
simple.
Make a really good society.
Yeah,
I think we might get it by voting Corbyn. You don't necessarily think the same.
Well, I don't know. I just I hope that Corbyn will come into power, which is questionable now because when's the next general election going to be?
Could be any minute, but it could be 5 years.
Exactly. Yeah. So he'll be about 70, and like I always say, I don't understand why you've got to be old as fuck to run for office.
No.
So, do we want a 70-year-old run as in
I
charge?
don't think he.
I think he's 68 now, isn't he? So
he's in his 60s.
So he'll be 73 if he has to wait 5 years.
But is that any more prejudice than saying you shouldn't be able to do that because you're young, or you shouldn't be able to do it because you're a woman?
If you're 18, if you get an 18-year-old in, fuck it.
But they don't have very much. Say, for example,
he should be he should be advising a 45-year-old candidate because you. When you're in your 20s, you have no idea what's going on. You're like, oh my God, like, I hope today's going to be fine. I hope something happens. And you sort of, the decisions in your 20s just are mostly bad. And you're sort of finding your way in the world. You're still a bit awkward. You're not quite fully grown. You're not quite who you're going to be for the rest of your life. Not that you ever really are. Yeah. You're just sort of learning your ropes. And every year you look back and you go, oh, 20-year-old me was right, dickhead. Oh, I'm now an adult. And then you come towards the end of your 20s, where I'm at now, and you go, actually, like, I'm still just a dickhead. Like I haven't worked anything out yet.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still just as confused. And then, from what I gather, you end in your 30s. You're still a lot of the same.
Of course.
But then you've got to start thinking about later on in life. So I think you're thrust into this need to sort of start thinking about later adulthood, wife, kids, and all that shit. And then in your 40s, I I'm just guessing. I'll get to 45 and I'll still be a little dick, you know. But I imagine it sort of plateaus a bit. And you're like, well, I'm sort of peaked, you know. I'm at my peak now, you know.
Yeah.
I'm mentally strong. I've been through a lot. I'm still relatively healthy.
Yeah.
Strong and stable is a word that you could use to describe me. And then now I'm ready to lead. And then you've got all these people, these elders around you, and these youngers as well. Lots of different people who then advise you. Corbyn would be a great, like, Obi-Wan, to make a Star Wars reference, in the later stages.
Yeah, just their sort of guiding Luke.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I understand. Well, I think that is what happens to an extent. I mean, if he were elected in, bear in mind, Jeremy Corbyn wouldn't run the country. The government would run the country, and it would be loads of people ageing from sort of their mid-20s to
we currently live in Love
mid-70s.
Island. Like, we currently live in a popularity contest. You know, like, that's... No one's voting for Labour. No one's voting for the Conservatives. Well, a large portion are voting for the Conservatives.
They're voting for Theresa May or Jeremy Corbyn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, like, it is elderly Love Island.
Yeah, and that's true, and it is just a popularity contest. But what you've got to realise is, fair enough, if that's how Corbyn's got to get into power, by sort of being socially popular and, you know, like, hip amongst young people, and he gets in, even though, yeah, it's maybe not the best way to do it because, like you say, it's basically just a big reality show at the moment. That does still get what I think would be a good government into power, and he doesn't embody the entirety of that government. It's lots of people on arguably sort of the same side of the fence as him, and hopefully people with sort of similar levels of what that morality are. But they're running it together. It isn't just one person going, so let's do this with education, let's do this with healthcare. Sure, he gets the final say on things and he can implement things much easier. But it is still a group, it is a community of government that actually governs. And I think if you just put the right one in, I really think that could be how you make the planet better. You've just got to, you know, make sure you put the right one in and hope it's in a system that doesn't allow for too much sort of corruption or greed to take over.
Well, I hope so. I do genuinely hope so. I know I'm a cynic and I'm miserable, but it's sort of who I am, and I like that about me.
Yeah, you go well on it. It suits you.
But I'm hopeful. And I think that's the end of the show.
Wow, what a note to end it on.
Yeah. I think we didn't really come to any massive conclusions, but I think we really delved into some interesting points, and I'm a little bit confused. I might have contradicted myself 2 or 3 times throughout the podcast, but it's because morality is a difficult one to get your head around.
And we're always growing, and we're always constantly in a state of flux. We're always changing.
Exactly. I'm not always the same person. I have many faces. And on that note, take care. Thank you, Joe. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thank you for listening.
Nice one.
Bye.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.